We're now seeing AI images everywhere, some great, some awful, and a lot of content hyping the best tools to create them. But how do you use AI in your real design workflow? In this video, I'll show 5 practical ways you can use AI in your designs. There are other tips I could share, but these 5 keep coming up again and again in my clients' projects. I'll demo these using Gemini and Nano Banana Pro, but I'll also touch on other platforms that you can use to get more control of your imagery towards the end. The first example is turning a pencil sketch or your sketches into imagery. So in the past, I used to be an animator and a designer. I once dumped a few sketches and designs that I put in to my Google Drive. If you look at a sketchbook page, this is many years ago. I can't even remember how old I was. I would sketch little stick figures or just ideas that I had and inspiration sketches in my sketchbook or characters. Or, for example, once I sketched out a kitchen that I was in. I think this was for a short film that I made, so I just sketched it out for myself just to visualize the set that I was going to film in. So you can take any of your sketches or just imagery that you collect and come into Gemini, upload the sketch. So in this case, let's say this hand and this hummingbird. I used to sketch in Biro pen, and it's really fun to sketch with a pen. But you can see not a lot of detail in there. And I just simply prompted it to say, I want to design an image based on this sketch for a wildlife conservation group. I just made it up. No text yet, just an image. As you can see, it's depicting a hand about to grab a hummingbird, which is delicate. It's for a social media campaign to raise awareness and generate donations for a specific event. Again, I'm making it up. I'm wondering what background and coloring we can go for. I think we need to maintain realism here, but convey the message needed for humans' heavy-handed, uncaring stewardship of nature. So I'm very vague here, right? I could be much more specific, and I'm going to show the point of using your sketches. You can use it to generate ideas or be specific. So it just generated me this image. Same compositions, could have said make it 16 by 9 and given it more instructions. The AI now, based on what I wrote, what I prompted, came up with an interpretation of what I'm looking for. So I could look at that and say, no, that's not exactly what I want. And now I'm kind of overlapping with the next practical demo that I'm going to show, which is editing. You can edit from there. So I could say, look, let's understand this image before generating another one. I didn't quite understand that. I think the hand should be clean and represent the corporate feel. The hummingbird is flying, so its wings should be blurred. I'm being more specific in my prompt now, and the background should be bright and less busy, even though there is a negative connotation on the topic. The image doesn't need to look dystopian. What do you think? Now, if I wanted it to respond in text here, I would write there, don't generate an image. And let's talk about this first, yeah? Because once you've generated an image inside Gemini, for some reason, it gets into a default state of generating images and forgets to answer you in text. So you actually have to prompt for that. One of the, let's say, issues of the UI currently in using the Gemini platform, just as a caveat, you could do exactly the same thing in ChatGPT. So you could create a new chat, upload that image, your sketch, and do exactly the same thing, except it will behave slightly differently. And also the image generation ChatGPT is slower, but actually is quite good now in terms of quality. I didn't test it in this case, but I came up with this image where it's much more aligned to what I prompted it. You can see that the sketch and the composition is kind of more or less the same. Now I could do the same for the image of a kitchen, this kitchen that I sketched, and it's a very rough sketch, low resolution, unfinished. There's little details of there, cutting board, fruit bowl, a little plant in the background there, a stool here, radiator. And I prompted it, generate a photo of this kitchen from the sketch. The countertop should have the black marble texture in the reference. So I uploaded this black marble. I also uploaded this reference of a sink with a tap. And I said, use the sink in the reference as well, near the window. The kitchen cabinets should be in a bright wood and show the kitchen during the daytime. Important to tell it what time of day, what's the lighting, to help it generate the kind of image you're looking for. The window and door frames should be of the same wood as the cabinets. And it generated me this image, this photographic image. So I could then say, okay, let's edit this and make this the cabinets and the wood be less saturated, much more paler, and just make it look better. So now I can actually edit the image through prompting and through other tools as well. But you can see you can get quick visualization of your sketches that you did in minutes, like this. I don't remember how long it took me, but definitely the hand and the bird took me a few minutes. And then suddenly I have a photo of my idea in a space of a minute. So in 3 minutes, say total, or 5 minutes total, you've already gone from idea, sketch to an actual rendered image. Moving on to the second example, extract a design language from your references. For example, I'm somebody with a lot of experience in art and design, animation, film. I've spent many years doing that kind of work. I don't find that I'm as good as I'd like to be in describing imagery in words, style references, objects, describing them properly in concise way that the other side will immediately be able to imagine it and understand what the image is about. I can describe things in general terms, and I'm really good at taking image references and saying, I like this, use this kind of lighting and use this kind of composition and describe it. Just words, I'm weaker than I wish I could be. I find a lot of people are like that, to be honest. I find that not many designers are able to really describe an image so that it's clear in your head what they're talking about. So use AI to do that for you, especially when you need to prompt the AI to generate new images. So in this case, I downloaded a random image that I liked on Pinterest, and I said to Gemini, extract the design style of this image. I want to describe the style and overall image tone, style, and palette in words suitable for a prompt without the objects seen here. I don't want it to focus on cactus. I do want it to focus on style and what the feeling and the overall mood I'm trying to get at. Initially, you see here, I've clicked image. That's because later on I generated image. I would use, in this case, Gemini Fast, not thinking, because that's Gemini 3 Pro. And the fast it doesn't need thinking. You don't need to analyze this, right? So I started with the Gemini fast mode, and it said this image blends mid-century modern aesthetic. You see, I would never have said that myself, with contemporary Bauhaus and boho minimalism. Now, yes, actually, I should have thought about Bauhaus, but it didn't come up in my head. And boho minimalism, I don't even know what it means by that. It uses a layered collage-like approach that focuses on geometric abstraction and texture rather than literal representation. So it described the image for me and created a kind of prompt for an image that would use this kind of style. I then gave it another image that I liked, and I said to it, okay, now do the same for this particular image. This image is a striking example of modern minimalist ink wash Sumi-E style. I would never be able to describe that. Blended with contemporary graphic illustration, fine. It relies on extreme negative space and high contrast color blocking to create a sense of profound stillness. See, it's very good at describing the image in a way that I'm not as clean in the way I would describe it. Again, a long description with a prompt, and I did the same for a third image. And then I said to it, actually here and this is something that I recommend as well, when you extract the information, of course, read it. So it wrote here, for this image, it wrote cross-hatched. Here you can see parallel lines in different densities and thickness of line to generate the shadow and the shading and the landscape that we see here, right? But here it described this as featured a distinctive hatched geometric impressionism style. So geometric impressionism style, sure, but hatched, it's not hatched. Later on, it actually said cross-hatching, directional cross-hatching. Now, cross-hatching is using X's, and that's not what we see. It did say parallel line shading. So I disagree that there's cross-hatching. Can you define it accurately? And then we had this discussion about what this image is. And this is what I mean by it being into default in the image. For some reason, it went into image generation. When I rewrite the style, then I see only diagonal lines in the image. Address the shading and coloring in your new prompt in words. And yet it generated me an image, and it's like, oh, that's not what I asked for. In Gemini, you have to be very specific in that. Again, I could have used ChatGPT to do all this, and I would have come up with equal results, I believe. And so I told it, I'm not asking for an image. Read the last prompt properly, and then it came up with the descriptions. But this is now where we're getting into what you can do with it. So now use the first image style, Bauhaus style, from this chat to generate an image where the main subject is a Coke bottle and there is a circle that represents the moon, but keep the style as described in that prompt. Generate the image using the aspect ratio of the first image. This one. It generated me a similar style image of this Coke bottle with the moon like I asked. It's not quite the same style. Refine it to the first image style and make the moon more abstracted and blue to depict the evening. You can see you can push it, you can play with it. It's not quite the style that I wanted, but it's at least close enough and you can be more specific. So this is what I mean about reading that description and then fine-tuning that description and seeing how you can get it to describe your image that you referenced in a way that you feel confident that that makes sense of what you're seeing, right? And then I continued, I said, okay, do the same with the second image. And it generated me this Coke bottle, again, with that negative space, that extreme negative space, where all the content of the image is actually on the right, like the previous image. You can see I went into the other style as well and played with that as well. Not quite the same style, but at least you can adjust it and edit it further. Example number 3 is similar to example number 2, where I'm taking style referencing. I could extract it in text, but I cannot just use the visual of it. So this is a painting that I have on one of my walls of an artist called Trechkov. He's a Russian artist. And I have this print of his portrait that he did of this African lady. It's not the best photo, but you can see that her skin is really smooth. The rest is all pencil sketches. And the oil painting of her face is really smooth. It's got this kind of green, it's much more saturated green in reality face. As the example I'm sharing is, if you're an interior designer or if you're even someone who wants to decorate your home and you're thinking of what kind of artwork should you buy or should you have on a certain wall, well, you could create your own art now and print at a good quality imagery based on references that you like. So just as an example, I took this photo of Robin Williams. I love that guy, one of the great old-time actors of our time. And I found this image. No matter what people tell you, words and ideas can change the world, with him looking up there. And I just grabbed this off Google and I asked it to re-render the photo of the man, even though it's obvious it's Robin Williams. I just said the man in exactly the same style of the painting of the woman by Trechkov. So keep the composition of the photo the same, just render his face in the same style as the woman, and the rest in the same pencil sketch. Also keep the text in the image as handwritten text. This prompt is poor, to be honest. It's not being precise. I think where, as you can see here, it didn't get the style. It got some of the things right. The fact that it's a sketch, it did change the text to kind of handwritten, but the actual style of the photo wasn't correct. So I went into this discussion with it, and it took me a long time to get to the style. And this is a good example of working with your AI and prompting it right to generate what it is you're looking for. So because I started with a vague prompt, I should have asked it to and gotten into the right definition of this to understand that what I'm looking for is an image where the face and the neck of my character needs to be highly detailed, fully rendered using oil painting with smooth strokes, smooth lighting, soft lighting to describe what I'm looking for, and the rest with charcoal drawing lines without detail, really describe what the style, what we're looking at here. I was surprised, to be honest, that it did such a poor job the first time without realizing. Usually Gemini is not that bad. Again, I could go to ChatGPT and try it, but I prefer to use Gemini for this, or Nano Banana Pro for this kind of work. So we went through this process of trying to figure it out, and here it was getting closer, except it changed the photo completely. Still kept the likeness of Robin Williams, but that's because he's a well-known figure, but not quite this look, and it's not the same composition. So again, I had to push the model to kind of get to that. I got into this conversation where I create the actual prompt that explains this. This is my long way of saying that first, capture the style of what you want, describe it so that you can then come up with an image like this. But here it got the aspect ratio wrong to be able to get to an image that you're looking for. So in this case, it kind of got to that final image finally, because I pushed it to understand that I want just the face and neck rendered in that kind of soft oil painting tone, and the rest I want it kind of just hand sketched. And I want the quote only without that extra text that was at the bottom here. But like, let's say I want now to print this and create a print out of it. I can now use this image and upscale it in another software like Topaz, or an application like Topaz.ai, I think it is, to get it to print quality. And then print it, frame it, put it up on my wall. So if you're a designer, if you're an interior designer, consider generating your own artwork or your own designs for your clients in such a way where you give it references, you have a discussion with your AI in order to generate these images to then offer that to your clients as artwork that they can keep. So example 4, editing an existing image. There are multiple ways of doing this and multiple platforms. In Gemini, you can do it also the same in ChatGPT. But if we look at Gemini, I'll show you 2 workflows or examples on the same image. So this image, which is an AI image, a redesign of this room that I'm sitting in. I wish I could redesign the real room. I'm renting this space out, so I would like to paint the walls. Not happy with them. So I would have liked to have this kind of, let's say, a Japandi style, what's called this kind of light gray and kind of brighter feel, not this blue, of course. So I just thought, okay, what could this room look like? And the AI came up with this strange LED lights at the bottom in this image. You could edit this just simply with prompts. Yeah, I could write something as simple as change the chair to a black chair, keep everything else the same, and it'll do so. Yeah. And I could keep going, change the time of day to dusk, which is really important to see how the room would look in different lighting. So we get the golden hour lighting coming into the room mixed with interior lighting. And it gave me this image where you've got this, it's not quite accurate because outside it looks really bright still, like as if it's midday. So I would have to prompt to that. I'm showing you this to suggest that if you're going to edit with prompting, make sure you're being specific and detailed in what your request is. I wrote here, remove the LED lighting at the floor perimeter and make the room look like it's evening. Add a modern small desk lamp on the table and that suits the room style, Japandi. So it did it. It added this lamp. It changed it to evening. It did keep this strange light source here, as if there's a sun coming through or a spotlight, which didn't make sense to me. And I asked it to change it. So it created that kind of moonlight effect rather than what it was showing previously. You can do this in ChatGPT in exactly the same way. It's a bit slower, but the ChatGPT, the OpenAI model is actually quite good now. So I do recommend, if you're a ChatGPT user, try it. So I uploaded this ugly chair from the internet, from Google. And I said, let's go back to the original image, replace the chair with this chair, keep the rest of the room the same. And this is where it starts losing control in Gemini. And sometimes in ChatGPT, the same thing can happen. I find that ChatGPT is a bit smarter in this case, but it just regenerated this chair. And I had this strange conversation with it where I said, but this is the room, place that chair in this room. And it still got confused. So I had to have this conversation with Gemini in order for it to kind of come close. It put it in the kind of room that's similar. Gemini lost context. Even though we're in the same chat, it managed to finally get it, but it changed the room and I couldn't get back to the original image. I'm showing you this, and a lot of people have talked about this, clients even complaining that, but I can't get control over the imagery. And yes, if you start seeing that you're losing context in a chat, the best option is for you to start a new chat and start again and be specific about what you want. So for example, let's say I upload this original image again. I upload this photo of a rhino that I took many years ago, another chair that I downloaded off the net. Let's say it's a chair I want to buy, I've ordered. And I wrote here, generate a new image of the room with these changes. Replace the chair in the photo with the chair in the reference image. Add photo of the rhino on the wall to the right of the window. I'm being specific. Add more books and items to the shelving unit on the left. And remove the LED lights on the floor perimeter. Keep everything else the same. The first thing I do is upload this image. I think this order matters. First, put the image you're going to change and edit, and then add the items that you want to give it as a reference. And it did exactly that. Put the rhino photo on the right, put this chair here and replaced it, and added the items on the shelving unit and got rid of this weird lighting that it had originally added to the floor. Another way of editing, you can upload an image from your hard disk, but if I say copy image, I can literally just Control V, paste it into the chat window. Once I've pasted an image or uploaded an image, I can come in and annotate. So I can draw here and add a big bumblebee here flying. You can ask it to edit on the image itself. What I did here is I drew a very rough potted plant in there. And I said, put a potted plant where I drew. And it added this potted plant. Now, of course, I could have uploaded an image of a potted plant and it would have taken that plant and put it here. And other ways and better ways is to go into platforms like Freepik. Recraft has a good tool as well. There's Krea.ai and OpenArt. I'll link to those in the description below. And what they give you is first the ability to generate images, videos, and they have tools like Image Editor. So you can upload a file like this and do the same thing I did here, where you can mask out objects and prompt it to change that area alone. So it'll keep everything else here. You can, of course, just prompt the changes. You can also erase certain areas and basically have more control over the areas of the images. So have a look at platforms like Freepik. The one I use is Freepik, simply because I like the interface, the fact that you get access to how many images you generate, and you can change the aspect ratio of the images. You can decide which models you want to work with. But in the image editor, I think that you don't get full control over the models. You can select which models here, but you don't get to know which models specifically in Freepik that you want. So that's kind of an overview on how to edit your images. I'll do a video on each of these examples I'm showing, and I'll go into do a deeper dive into every single one of them, because even in editing, you have multiple ways that you can look at it and approach it. The fifth example I want to show you is akin to editing images again. I uploaded this AI-generated image of a living room in a certain style, and I said to it, take this palette and reimagine this room in this color palette, keep the room style and furniture. So I took that palette, made a kind of mistake here in the curtains. I could edit that, I could give it a prompt, or I could have been more specific in what I wanted it from it, and I'll show you an example of that. But it did stick to that palette. Yeah, it kept the cream, it kept the blues and the different blues and that kind of gray. So if you're working to designs, if you're designing something, be it your graphic design, your logo designs, your interiors, your product designs, you can play with color palettes now in seconds or minutes, really. So I gave it another palette and said, okay, simple prompt, now this palette. And it generated the room in that palette. And this time was quite consistent in the items, except for these things here in the shelf. It also maintained that weird color palette that I showed it. I could have been specific and said, all the items on the shelves be realistic in the color palette. Another palette I gave it. In this palette, I suggest the curtains to be dark blue and carpet of the olive green, balance the rest logically. I'm using this example again to show where it starts breaking down. My assumption is that it understands that I'm giving it a new palette. I suggest the curtains to be the dark blue. I'm assuming it's going to understand this dark blue and the carpet of the olive green, assuming it's going to see this olive green and make the carpet that color. Balance the rest logically, forgetting that there's a whole context that happened beforehand with a blue and blues here. So what happened? First of all, it didn't do the photo. So I asked it, really, what is that? And it answered. And I said, look at this chat and tell me if that last response is relevant. Of course, it realized, no, it isn't. So I said, exactly, now render the room in the last palette like I asked. So it didn't, because now it's collecting the whole chat context and getting confused. So when you're dealing with Gemini and ChatGPT or language models to help edit and work on imagery, you really have to be specific in your prompting. And that's the difference between working here versus working in Freepik, for example, or the other platforms that I mentioned, and having a prompt that's fixed, right? And the uploaded image is always there as a reference. So it's almost always a new chat. Yeah, it's always a new event. And you're not getting the context of the things that you did previously that influence what you're about to do. So in Freepik, I would upload that image of the kitchen, let's say this, or of the living room, but in this case, a kitchen. There is a tool here that allows you to generate a color palette, but you can generate your styles. But if you want to stay in Gemini, just be more precise. So in the end, I had to push it and say, okay, in this palette I gave you, attached again, there's a dark blue and olive green, right? I recommend you use them in 2 places. So I'm very specifically now mentioning this palette and these colors in it. And at this time, I was able to understand from that prompt. I'm showing you all these examples to kind of give you a sense of that you can play with all these methods to reimagine, redesign your workflow, and just come up with solutions and build your own workflows. Try to figure out methods that work for you. So there are platforms out there and tools out there that you can streamline the way you do things. And if you build the right Gemini gems and the right prompts, you can really fine-tune the way you work and start streamlining those processes. But these 5 examples give you a kind of a taste of what you can do or how you should start implementing AI in your workflows. So that's how I use Gemini. I also use ChatGPT to help me define prompts, write prompts, pull out references, brainstorm ideas, redesign concepts that I have. I have to create those thumbnails for YouTube. I'm using Gemini and ChatGPT now to generate those for me because it knows me, it knows my style, knows what I'm looking for. And often they provide me with the backgrounds for the thumbnails. They're very simple, and to generate or create them on my own is a lot of work. So I do that in a space of a few minutes and go into Photoshop and finish off the imagery. If you're on ChatGPT or Gemini already, to use them in your workflows. And I do recommend looking, if you're not already on one of the platforms that I mentioned earlier, which is Freepik, Krea, or OpenArt, I suggest, or if you're an Adobe user, try Adobe Firefly. I suggest subscribing to one of those because they're very useful. Another one that you might want to look at is called Recraft that I've used in the past, and I've got a video on that. Together, they can sit in your workflow. You've just got to figure out how they sit in your workflow and where you want them to be used. So I hope that helped you in your processes and opening your mind in different ways of how to use AI imagery in your design workflows. And if you want to reach out to me to see how I can help you in your workflows specifically, like I do for my clients, then you can reach me on LinkedIn, on my website. I'll leave those links in the description below. So in the meantime, click the like button and do subscribe to my channel. It'll really support me and help me grow. If you want to see how you can use AI to create your branding and create content from that branding, then click on this video link here. Or if you want to see how you can use the AI to define your social media and create social media content, including imagery, then click on this video link here.